Welcome back to Just Scrap Radio on bjpenn.com. I'm your host, Cole Shelton. Episode 158 is live ahead of UFC Vegas 89 and a very nice Bellator card this weekend. The Bellator's back. First up, we're joined by Jeremy Kennedy to preview his title fight against Patricio Pitbull. This is a really interesting chat. I've talked to Jeremy for a long time, and he's excited for this one just because he was supposed to fight James Gallagher. He ends up getting moved. He's now fighting Patricio Pitbull. We're then going to be joined by Julian Erosa to preview his fight against Ricardo Ramos. Julian coming off that stoppage loss to Fernando Padilla. It's been a bit since we saw him, but he's back in action, and he's really looking forward to this. He knows it's going to be do or die on a 2-fight losing streak, 2 first-round knockouts, and he's really looking forward to fighting a guy like Ricardo Ramos. And then we close things out. We just close things out talking to Kurt Holobaugh, about his fight against Trey Ogden. So I had a brain cramp about who he was next, but really good chat with Kurt. First fight that's fighting on tough. He's the underdog against Trey Ogden, which is a bit of a surprise to him, but he's really looking forward to this matchup. He likes it, but be sure to share the show, subscribe, and tune in next week for another episode of Just Scrap Radio.
All right, we're joined by Jeremy Kennedy, who's fighting for that Bellator title here pretty soon. Jeremy, how's it going, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Like, before we start about the fight, I want to talk about the merger and everything. Like, it was kind of a weird couple months for you guys. Like, what was that kind of like for you, just not really knowing what was going to be the future Bellator and the kind of the future of your career?
Yeah, I mean, probably just those last couple months, like the rumors surrounding the sale before it actually was official, and then once it wasn't as official, it was still kind of like I think everyone was trying to figure out what was going on. I mean, so yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't easy around the holidays and everything, not knowing what the future held or what the next year would look like, especially a guy in position was I've been waiting Todd, and it was supposed to be around the corner, and then Denver's champ thing was, so it was definitely like nerve-wracking, but I in the workout, like we have to, these fighters, we're gonna end up fighting. It was a matter of when and where and whatnot, and it all worked out well.
And then for you, like, you're supposed to go be on Bellator 302, like you're going out to Ireland, and then you're supposed to be fighting James Gallagher, like a hometown guy there. And then all of a sudden it comes out that Gallagher's fighting Hegel, and I'm like, oh, I was going to message you. I'm like, oh, are you out of the fight? And then I see a minute later you're fighting Pitbull for the title. Like, how did that all change?
Man, that was crazy as well. They offered me the Gallagher fight, and that had a number one contender fight stipulation on it, which was good for me. I couldn't wait any longer for the title, especially with Pitbull having a fight in February. So that was going to put me to sometime in the summer. So I was willing to fight anyone. That's who they gave me, and it was a good opponent in a good, his own hometown. There have been a lot of eyes, but and then I got the call pretty much the same day that Braga didn't make weight is when they contacted me, seeing if I would be interested in the switch, and that's a no-brainer. That's there was no questions asked there. That's the fight I wanted originally, anyways. And then it kind of got on my timing, which was nice. Rather than chasing Bull around, it was kind of like I was already on this date, and now he's coming to me, which worked out the best.
Are you surprised Pitbull said yes to this, just because like it is almost like a short notice fight for him as the champion? Like, he now has to do another weight cut a month later. Like, were you surprised he was interested in this?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think he was probably one of the more driving forces, because I had my fight set. I think he was probably frustrated with all the circumstances that happened with him, with Pinedo pulling out, Braga falling out, the whirlwind that whole fight week probably took on him. He was just like, I'm ready to go. He's in shape. And then if he didn't end up having this fight, what was next for him, because this was a number one contender fight. So he would have almost been in the same position of me, of waiting until that fight played out. So he kind of just decided, screw it, and let's just go right to it. I mean, he's already in shape, and it was a month from when we both found out. Like that February 24th to March 22nd was exactly 4 weeks. So, I mean, the only difference was obviously style, and he had to jump up from 3 to 5 rounds as well. But that's obviously something he must be comfortable with. He's done it his whole career. That was my only thing that I was like, oh, that's a a bit of a change, other than the opponent. I've been training for Pitbull, so it's not like it was a brand new, fresh face to me. I've had him on my mind all year, but the 3 to 5 rounds was the only difference. And I build my game off of cardio, so I had an extra 4 weeks to really up that and make sure it's ready for 5. And here we are.
And then for you, like, it is Pitbull's in this weird spot where he is the champion, but he's coming on a 2-fight losing streak. Like, you don't ever see that. Like, what have you made of those last 2 fights? Like, obviously cut all the way down to bantamweight, trying to win titles in 3 weight classes. Sergio won that fight, and then getting knocked out back in July against like a guy I think most people in North America don't really know who is. Like, what have you kind of made of those last couple of fights, and him kind of entering this fight like on a 2-fight losing streak as a champion?
Yeah, I think he to himself. I mean, I've been way over here, and he took. Obviously, you can't fault him for trying to get that 3rd title down 5, especially if he. But I mean, right after that, he knew I was next, and he decided to step in on a couple days' notice against a very good potential kickboxer that nobody knows about. So up 2 weight classes from what he just fought. So I mean, I don't put it, like, that's on him. Now he's coming in with his back as the champion, and he's had options. He fought me off 2023, and now he's fighting me arguably at the worst, nothing but bad, and he's had nothing but stumbles this year. So it worked out for me, and it sucks to be him.
Cool. Like, just how do you think you kind of match up against Pitbull then?
Yeah, I think I match up great with him. Honestly, I think him going down to 135 definitely hurt him. And just the size-wise, it takes a while to put that weight back on. And, I mean, he even made weight in Saudi Arabia a couple weeks ago, and it didn't look like he was hurting or struggling or anything like that. So all these weight cuts and fluctuations up and down definitely don't help give you that optimal size for that specific weight class. And for me at 145, I think I'm at that absolute peak where you can't be much bigger than me. And with my height and my size and my pressure style, that I'm a handful. And for a guy who's not the biggest 45er, that's a hard, tough task.
For Pitbull too, like, do you kind of think he's getting to that point where maybe he is on that downside of his career? Like, he is 36, like, being that age at these like lower weight classes, like, you see the kind of the older you get, it is harder to be at the top in these like lighter weight classes.
Yeah, I mean that 35 rule really been a big thing with Volk and Ilya and stuff. So it's funny that came to light now, and then here we are. I'm fighting a champ who's over 35, and I'm the young one. And I mean, the statistics don't lie. I think there was like a record out there that it was like 1 in 22 title fights. So I hope to add to that. And I'm still preparing like I'm fighting the best Pitbull, the Bellator GOAT. I mean, he is the undisputed featherweight champ. He hasn't lost at this weight class during this little down at 35 and up at 55. So I'm still feeling like I'm fighting the Pitbull of old, and I think he's going to have something to prove too. All these questions that everyone's asking me, I'm sure he's getting the same questions asked to him, whether like, is it his time? Is that timing? And I mean, I feel like that's fueling him to come out a lot more aggressive at me. And I'm anticipating that now just because of his last few fights. He's been pretty like slow and methodical and technical. And I just have this weird feeling now he's going to try to come out and prove something and really bring the fight to me right out the gate.
Does anything change like much for your training? Like, obviously it is 5 rounds now, but going from Gallagher to Pitbull, like, do you switch to focus on someone else, or is it just kind of the same? And just kind of building up, like, do you switch training partners? Is it kind of the same people you were always working with?
Yeah, it's like my schedule and my routine stays the same, but I just up the workload a little bit more just because of those 2 extra rounds. Sparring a little bit more. My pad works are a little bit more. My cardio, my conditioning's a little bit more. And then as far as training partners as well, I had to switch to more body size just because Pitbull is a pretty unique put it this way, I'm training with predominantly bantamweights just because of their size, their speed, their length, their reach. For me to get somebody that like 5'6", 66-inch reach style, it's all the bantamweights. and getting used to that size, and he's a counter puncher and stuff. So he's a lot different of a look than Gallagher was. But I already had everything, who I wanted to use, the game plan with all my different coaches for Pitbull already. So by the time this fight got put together, it wasn't like a short notice thing. I had to, rally everybody. It was more of, hey, this is the switch up. We're going back to what we've been doing all year. Talk to the guys that I've been wanting to work on. They were all on board, and here we are. It was a pretty seamless transition.
How do you kind of see this one playing out then?
I mean, it's hard to say. Like, he's a guy who's very difficult to submit, and like guys who are short-limbed like that, hard to hold down, hard to keep down. But I also, on the feet, I think I'm going to shock a lot of people, with my reach and my length. And I mean, it's hard. I can't say I'm going to knock him out on the feet or a TKO or a submission, but I do think it's not going to go 5. I think he's gonna break on my pressure. The late rounds, 3, 4, 5. We're gonna find out, how much more he's got left in him, and because I'm gonna be there 100%. The same Jeremy in the first is gonna be the same Jeremy in the 5th, and I don't think it's gonna last that long.
What do you think a win does for your career? Like, obviously, becoming champion's a big deal, but like you kind of had this up and down career. Like you were like almost top 15 guy in the UFC. Then you kind of go to Brave, and like not a lot of North American guys really watch you. So you kind of like, I felt like people kind of forgot about you. Then you kind of had this weird run the BFL, and now you kind of have a lot of success Bellator. Like, what do you think that does? 'Cause it's been like a very odd career for you.
Yeah, it's been a unique career, I would say. Like, not a lot of guys have gone this path. I've been fighting at the top level, paid full time as a fighter for almost 10 years now. Started at the UFC, and I went around, went to the PFL, had success there, Bellator, where I've had the most success. And here we are, finally at a title. And it didn't matter where, when I was in the UFC, I was gunning for a ranking and gunning for the title. When I was in PFL, I was gunning for that $1 million in that championship type tournament. And then as soon as I got to Bellator, I was like, you know what, the rankings had just come out at that time. So I was itching. I was like, give me Borks, give me Sanchez, give me Pico, give me everyone who's ranked higher. I want to get to that title fight. And I mean, here we are. So I think it's more of just like, career cap, not a career cap, because I got a lot of years left. But it's just, at the end of my career, I want to be able to look back and be like, hey, I was a champion. I held. It's more for the resume that why this one means so much to me is I've been around, I've fought in all the promotions, and now I have something to show for it essentially.
Pitbull is like see the face Bellator, like he's like a long reigning champ. Do you think you'd have to beat him twice if you win, or do you think maybe because he is on that losing streak, like it would be hard to give him that title fight again, because it would be 3 losses, even though it is just like his first at featherweight?
Yeah, I mean I'm anticipating beating him twice because he is, he deserves a rematch. When AJ got that quick one over him, they ran it back right away, and he's successful in his rematches. I don't know what his record is, but it's got to be pretty good on rematches. So I would imagine he's going to want to run that back. And how do you say no to a guy like, again, he went down and did something that nobody else has done, tried to challenge it at a 35, cut all that weight, and you can't fault him. And then the short notice one, again, that one just kind of bugs me. So maybe I won't let him just because he did that. But I was waiting for him. And but again, the Japanese thing, he did his Ryzen thing for whatever reason, and I can't fault him on that. He's still the featherweight champ, and he's got a great featherweight record. So if that's what Bellator came to me with afterwards, by all means. But I think the way this fight's going to play out, I don't think there's going to be a real question for it.
Just 2 more things, like for you, like if you win the belt, does that mean like you're only fighting on these Bellator cards, or is there a path to get into that PFL tournament, or like what is kind of that future for you?
I mean, I guess like the guess is as good as mine for as far as like what direction Bellator is going. I know for 2024, they've laid out the whole year and the dates and locations and stuff. So I know there's business at 45 at Bellator for me when I get this title. The tournament, I feel like when you have a belt to go into the tournament is almost like, I'm stepping back. Like these guys have got to be fighting to get to that championship stage, have the champ versus champ kind of thing. That's more what I'm looking forward to is another one of these, you know, champ versus champ. I want that ring. I want the new big belt. So that opens a lot of opportunities as well. You know, there is guys for me to defend in Bellator, but with all of us under one umbrella, and that's what I was meaning with this merger, is I just think there's a lot more opportunity now. It's not just like I'm the champ and I have the next contender in line and that's all that is. You know, like there's bigger fights, then that's what I want too, if there is. You know, if there's a champion from PFL they're trying to make a cross promotion thing, then I'm all for it. If they want to make these like if I can get on like a Francis Ngannou pay-per-view event against a PFL standout, like come on, right? Like but all these opportunities only come from beating Pitbull. So I haven't thought too much into it. It's pretty easy to get the imagination going crazy, but I'm just so focused, man. We're so close. 2 weeks. I'm going to have all these answers for you. I promise.
I guess the only positive of the turn is just the $1 million. Like other than that, like you're still getting paid fights. Like the $1 million, obviously a huge lot of money, would be nice, but like I get to the point where like you are the champ, like you can still defend your belt, still make a lot of money doing that, and not worrying about doing these turnarounds and all that.
Fights in 7 months, like for a guy who, for me, like I need my weight cuts are pretty scientific, you know. So to be doing that, and I've done that tournament once. I know what the toll is on your body. So for me, it would have to be, that's probably like lower on the list, but it's definitely still something that I don't rule out before my career is done is running that tournament back.
Just final thing, like we've been doing these for a while, and like someone I remembered and I just wanted to ask you about was, I remember when you were calling out Volkanovski for that Australia fight, like that was a fight you were really asking for. Like looking back, like did you ever think he'd go on to have the career he had and like being like arguably the best feather? Because that was a fight that you were really wanting and you thought like was a pretty winnable fight for you.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I was young and stupid in the UFC. I made a lot of mistakes. I'm not saying asking or getting that fight was a mistake, just how I approached it. You know, I was a young kid and flew with like my girlfriend and my buddies. I flew across the world to Perth, you know, and fought him. And that fight kind of changed my path to move to Extreme Couture and be a full-time professional. And then it did, you know, lead a lot to my exit to the UFC. And so it's kind of brought me to where I'm at. So to be upset with that is that, like, that's probably one of the biggest career altering things that I've had, and for the better. Now here I am fighting Pitbull, another featherweight GOAT and one of the best of all time. And I think now it's perfect. And I was always looking for the tough fights, and so it doesn't surprise me that he moved on. And it's funny because I think his next fight after me was Darren Elkins, and that was the fight that I wanted next after. So it's funny that he went on and he did his thing. Like his run after me was Volkanovski, Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo. Like if you're going to have a loss and a first loss of your career, that's the one to have. So it's all good. I mean, that's the past now.
Well, Jeremy, I appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much for doing this again.
Of course, man. Appreciate it.
All right, we're joined by UFC featherweight Julian Erosa, who's back in action here at the end of March. Julian, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I always enjoy talking to you, but obviously it's been a while since I saw you. Like it's like 11 months. Like, was this something you wanted time off, or like is it just you couldn't get a fight? Like, what kind of was the reason for the layoff?
You know, after my last fight, I talked to my management, and I was kind of transitioning over with my main coach, and so management thought it'd be a good idea if I took a little bit of time off, but you know, I didn't want to take this much time off, and it wasn't necessarily taking time off. I had transitioned 100% fully over to Extreme Couture and having Eric Nixick as my main coach. But you know, it wasn't like I was moving states or moving away to some other gym. So I've, you know, even though Eric Nixick hasn't been my main coach for, you know, the entire time, I've been in Las Vegas for 6 years, and he's cornered me, you know, in the gym, and he's cornered me against the guys that he was getting ready for. So even though he hasn't necessarily been my main coach, he's seen me for the last 6 years, you know, and me as well with him. So it was a very easy transition. And honestly, like after the first couple of weeks, I had messaged my manager, and I was like, yo, man, I'm like ready to go. Like this was a super easy transition. Like everything's running on, you know, fantastically. So like if we can just get something lined up, because coming off that last fight, felt like it was something that was stopped a little early, and all I wanted to do was to get back in there to right that wrong. And so, but it just, I don't know what was going on. It just seemed like it just kept getting delayed and pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. I mean, I was even, I was ready to fight, and I was helping out Dan Ige getting ready to fight Nate the Train Landwehr. So that was like forever ago. That was like over 6
the
months ago.
summertime, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, and I was at that time I was helping Dan out, and I was like, man, I'm ready to rock and roll. Like if they can give me something even short notice, I was willing to take it, and it just nothing came to fruition. And then finally this fight rose about. But there's one of those things where you just sometimes you rush things too much, and sometimes if I had it my way, I'd fight every weekend just because I feel like we're in the gym fighting all the time, and you just don't want to waste your potential. You don't want to waste your time and energy, your brain cells in the gym constantly, and you don't want to be it seemed like I was helping a lot of guys get ready for fights, so it felt like for me I was getting ready a lot of times with with nothing at the end of the there was no carrot at the end of the string for me. It was just like help Dan get ready for his fight. I was helping this kid named Eli for his fight, and then helped out Aljo for his Sean O'Malley fight, helped out Dan again for his recent fight a little, because he fought Andre Feely, and then so it was like I kept getting, helping guys get ready for fights, and it almost felt like I was in fight camp, but just nothing at the end of the stick for me. So it's nice to actually have something on the books and look forward to.
Just quickly on your last fight, like what do you take away from that? Like I know it was a while back now, but like it kind of had that early style, just seemed like, and just like fighting a guy like Fernando, like what do you kind of take away from that one?
Yeah, as much as I think it was a bit, it stopped a bit early. That's a position I shouldn't have put myself into. I shouldn't have put myself in a situation where the refs questioning whether I can continue or not. I need to make it evident that that I'm still in the fight and not let that happen. Obviously, I think the stoppage was early when he had stopped the fight. Obviously, I got dropped pretty bad before that, and I worked my way up, and then he hit me again, and I fell to a knee and popped up immediately, and then they stopped it. So I think it was the prior event, the prior dropping of me that stopped the fight. When he did. So I think that was just more kind of a little bit of a mistake on Chris Ione's part, but I can't blame him. There's only one person I can blame, and that's myself. With Fernando, one thing that surprised me was just his range and his kind of his quickness and his range. He was able to touch me further out than I thought he was, and that's kind of what set up him dropping me with the first right hand. So I mean, and the fight was was relatively quick, so it's hard to really take away from those things. But just training camps, the weight cuts, you're always learning every time you're doing these things. So regardless of how the fight comes out, there was a lot of weeks that I put in that training camp, things I took away from that, things that I learned, that I learned still on cutting weight and, helping me with that as well. So there's still things I can pull from that, even though the fight was a bit shorter than I would like it to have been. And that, the main thing was just to protect myself at all times and not get myself in those situations where the ref is questioning whether he needs to stop it or not.
And then with Ricardo Ramos, like how familiar were you with him? Like I know he was a bantamweight. He's been at featherweight now, I think, for like 5-6 fights. Like had a couple stints. Like how familiar were you with him?
Yeah, I'd watched him fight. Obviously, I take interest in the guys that I fought, and Charles Jourdain was one of the guys that I fought, and Ramos's last fight was Charles Jourdain. So I obviously watched that fight, and before that, I know I'd seen him fight, but I couldn't, put a face on him. And so seeing that fight really, kind of opened my mind or opened my eyes to who he was specifically. And like I said, I'm always watching the guys that that I fought before or that, I previously have been matched up with, regardless if the fight happened or not. So I kind of knew of him beforehand, but, I've been able to really, dissect and watch a lot of his tape that he has, especially because he's got 11 fights in the UFC, so there's a lot of tape to be watched.
What have you kind of made of his run at featherweight? Like I think he's 3-3, just kind of alternates wins and losses, but have fought some pretty tough guys in the division.
Yeah, I think he. I mean, we're in the UFC. Everybody's good.
Yeah.
I think and I don't want to pass judgment on anybody, because I have no idea. I don't even know the guy. I've never met him. And I don't train with him. Never trained with him. But when you see people that have moved up in weight classes, it could be a couple of different reasons. I personally am a big featherweight, and yeah, maybe down the road I could move to 55 and do well, but not because I couldn't get the weight off. I can get the weight off because I'm determined to get the weight off because I put the time and effort and also I'm mentally tough. It's one of those things that causes you to be mentally tough. And I feel like some guys that because Ricardo Ramos isn't huge at featherweight by any means. I mean, he was a pretty big bantamweight for sure, but I think he could still make bantamweight if he want to. I think it's just one of those things that if he can get away with being a featherweight, why not? Years sometimes can take away from that mental strength a little bit. Also, a couple of fights that I've watched, even the Jourdain fight, it seemed like Jourdain had was immediately going for the guillotine right out the gate. When they were in a grappling situation, and it just seemed like something that he was obviously going for, and then he eventually gets kind of deep, and once it finally got kind of deep, Ramos pretty quickly tapped, and I don't want, like I said, I want to pass judgment, but I feel like he's, had been in a couple of spots where he's given up. And that's one thing you won't find with me. Just will never give up. I've been knocked out. I've been finished in the UFC, but none of those were because I gave up. They were because, I got caught, it's just, part of the game. But I feel like a couple of times he's, kind of given up in those spots. And, I really want to exploit that.
And just fighting at the Apex, I know it's obviously close to you. Like you can get home to your own bed in like 10 minutes after the fight. Like, do you enjoy that, or do you wish this was on one of those cards in front of fans?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I'm cool with either one. I enjoyed just fighting in the in Las Vegas, just like you said. I'm 10 minutes away from my house, so and also this fight's gonna be a bit different for me. My wife is due to give birth about 9 days before this fight, so definitely got a lot going on in the week and a half. Prior to this fight, and March is a busy month for us, but it's one of those things that I really enjoy. Kind of having that happen. I was, with her due date, I was a bit worried about when the fight was going to happen. But then when I started thinking about it, I was like, I think this is actually perfect because if it was a little earlier than her due date, then I'd be more worried that she was going to accidentally give birth while I was fighting. And so the fact that it's after the due date, at least by a week and a half, I can rest assured that she's probably already going to have the baby. She'll be settled at home, so I won't have to worry about that necessarily. But yeah, I would have hated to have to go fight, internationally or across states where I'd have to drive or fly, any kind of distance because I'm going to have a baby boy here and my wife. So as soon as I can get home is what I'm going to want to do after my fight. So being in Vegas was very crucial for this fight.
Going into this fight, like how much pressure is on you? Just like coming off 2 losses, like haven't fought in a bit. Like, is there a lot of pressure? Or do you not really pay attention to that?
I feel like there's less pressure, I remember I did an interview with somebody and they were asking me about kind of the same situation. But it's like when you're winning fights and doing well, people expect you to keep doing that. And so once you fall off, like when I beat Hakeem, I was on a 3-fight win streak. I was doing well. I was about to, kind of crack the top 15. People then expect you to keep going and keep doing that. And then anything less than that is a disappointment in people's eyes, And so for me, like after that fight, I had a lot of pressure on my shoulders, it felt like. And then you lose a fight and then you lose another one. And then and now I feel like there's a lot less pressure, like now what do people expect? They just expect me to lose. So for me, I feel like I have nothing to lose. But then again, a lot of people, a lot of the time when you have that kind of pressure, it's because of people online, people that don't really know what fighting's about. People just talking shit. And so Ricardo Ramos is he's a respectable opponent, and he's tough, he's durable, he's in the UFC for a reason. He's been at this for a long time, so I'm really happy to be able to mix it up with somebody like that. But like I said, he's good, in his own right, and so I got to be careful that I don't make the mistakes. I mean, even Fernando Padilla was a debuter when I fought him. So you gotta be careful with anybody, even if it is a debuter, even if it's a veteran. You gotta understand the risks and try to mitigate those.
How do you kind of see this one playing out then?
Preferably just like any other fight, I want to just, drag it out as long as possible. I think that he has less stamina than I do, less cardio, less heart than I have. And so the longer the fight goes, the better it is for me. And that's why the last two fights have kind of sucked because they've ended before they started for me in my own head. And so if I can get him past the first half of the fight, I think it's going to be fantastic for me. And I think I can, finish him with a TKO or submission. I mean, I could see myself, getting him in a guillotine just like Charles Jourdain did. Not to say that I'm a better grappler than Charles Jourdain, but I know if somebody's able to get guillotined, I have a really good guillotine, and so it's going to be if he ducks his head in there, he's going to have a lot to fight out of.
Well, what do you think a win here does for you? Like, as he kind of gets you back in the winning ways, but like in the grand scheme of things, the division, like where do you think that kind of puts you?
Yeah, for sure. It puts me back where I was. The two losses that I had. If we go over those, lost to Caceres. Caceres is a veteran, and he's been, kind of top 15 for the longest time. So it's not like with him, it was like, that was, me testing myself, and I lost that test, and it's something you just move past. But it's not necessarily a huge mark on my record. And then, with Fernando, it was a bit of a, early stoppage. And the thing that sucks about that is I've had a lot of fights. Some of my best fights are fights I've been dropped in. Sean Woodson dropped me. Charles Jourdain dropped me before I finished both those guys. In the little bit of a scramble that I had with Nate
Peterson
Landwehr.
was crazy too. Like you guys both.
Yeah, yeah. Steven Peterson hurt me. Even Nate Landwehr had dropped me to a knee for half a second right before I finished him too. So like, some of my best fights and my comeback wins are wins off of getting dropped or having these crazy exchanges and getting hurt a little bit and coming back. And so that one kind of sucked for me because I really think that if Chris Tione would have let that fight go, it would have been a different outcome. But I also can't blame him for that. That's my fault. It's on me. I have to deal with that. Like I said, I wish I would have kept going on that one, but so like, that being on my record too, it's like, there's an asterisk next to that one because I felt like it was stopped a bit fast. So if I get a win over Ricardo Ramos, who's been, doing well in his own right in the division, kind of puts me back to where I was before the Caceres fight.
What is kind of the goal then for you this year? Like kind of mentioned, it has been a bit for you. I know you like fighting as much as possible, so I'm imagining it's probably be a pretty active year for you.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I would love to fight as much as possible. I'm about to have a kid, so I'm definitely gonna want to enjoy my time with him and with my wife. But the more I can fight, the more time I can stay at home with him. So I would prefer to fight, at least 3 times this year if I can. But like I always say, focus on this fight, and nothing matters until this fight's over. So after that, then I can think about what else is gonna happen.
And maybe get on that Sphere card, just being a Las Vegas guy. Like it looks pretty cool. Like I don't really know how
Oh,
it's gonna work fighting wise, but it seems like pretty sick to be on.
yeah, I think that'd be a super fun one. But the only thing that'd be weird is just like if you're fighting, how are they gonna block out this big ass screen
Yeah,
behind you? That's I can't imagine how they're gonna do that. But I mean, I would love to do anything, man. If they were gonna do that, I'll fight in a freaking Venetian parking lot for the UFC if they wanted me to. So yeah, I'd be down for that for sure.
just final thing, like obviously a big change in your weight class. What you make of Ilya's knockout over Volkanovski, and did you expect that fight to play out like that?
I actually, if you would have asked me who I thought was gonna win that fight, I would have, told you Volkanovski only just because he's been in that spotlight for a long time and has had that high pressure those high pressure fights before. And Ilya, in his own right, has done very well and had some pretty big spots himself. But I did, I mean, he won the way I figured Ilya would have won is with his boxing and knocking him out the way he did. It was interesting to see Volkanovski's game plan because he came out and I think in the first not even 20 seconds or maybe like the first minute he had thrown like 15 lead late kicks. So I think he had a game plan with that going on, and it would have been interesting to see how that was going to go in the 5-round fight. But Ilya took it well, and came back and really showed why he's one of the best and why his boxing is like some of the best boxing in the division. So I think him versus Max Holloway would be a fun one later down the line because I think they both think that they're the best boxer in the division. And to see a fight with like a veteran like Holloway would be really cool. And it's just a different matchup. Volkanovski is different than a lot of those guys. So it'll be interesting to see some of these matchups with Ilya. But man, he looked fantastic.
I was surprised Volk didn't wrestle. I thought he was going to wrestle early on, like similar to what he did to Yair, and like not really stand with them early on. And then kind of once Yair got tired, then he started standing with them more. Like I thought he was going to follow a similar game plan to that.
Yeah, and just, man, fighting is such a crazy thing to do with so many variables. And it actually looked like Volkanovski was doing fantastic with evading some of the big strikes and heavy boxing that Ilya was doing. He kept, getting out and getting kind of angling off and not getting it. It was kind of like at the end of his punches, but even further out. And then, but once Ilya got him kind of trapped against the cage, that's when he ended up knocking him out. So I think that was a little bit of an adjustment that Ilya had made for that. But yeah, you never know what the exact game plan is when the fight's over in the second round because it's a long fight. So maybe he was planning on wrestling later on in the fight and just trying to find his range early. But yeah, I mean, it would have been interesting to see that because Ilya is obviously decent with his wrestling defense, but Volkanovski looks like he's strong as shit. So it would have been interesting to see how he did with the wrestling.
Well, Julian, I appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much for doing this again.
Oh, yeah, no problem, man. You have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you as well. All right, we're jumping UFC lightweight Kurt Holobaugh, who's finally back in action here at the end of March. Kurt, how's it going, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's been a while for you. Like, is this a lot longer than what you thought it would take after winning the Ultimate Fighter in August?
Yeah, it kind of is. I had some plans after winning the final in August. I would have liked to have fought that late December on that December 16th card, but if I didn't get a fight on that card, I wasn't worried about it. But I was going to take Thanksgiving, take Christmas off with the family, but I was expecting to have something like January, maybe February. So it started getting, January, and I'm thinking, oh man, I hit my managers up a couple times. I was like, oh, they're just nothing yet. And then finally, I got a call saying, okay, Trey Ogden, March 23rd, Apex, Vegas. So I'm like, all right, let's do it.
You just did the Ultimate Fight at the Apex. Are you a bit annoyed having to go back there, or do you kind of like it? How much success you had there?
No, but it doesn't matter to me, man. I've always felt like I've done really well in like the Apex or the old Ultimate Fighter gym for that matter. So I mean, the only bad thing about the Apex is I love for my family and all them to be able to go, and being in this at the Apex, families really can't go. It's kind of a closed door event. You got to be a celebrity and some shit like that to really get into the fights. But I mean, it is what it is, man. I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna do my job, have fun doing it, and afterwards, once we get out the cage, man, have a night out in Vegas.
And with Trey, like, how familiar were you with him when you got this name?
I'm not super familiar with him, but I do remember him fighting a couple fights in the UFC. I remember the Nicholas Mota fight. Can't remember if I was actually watching that fight live when it happened, but that definitely rang a lot of bells on that fight when I said, okay, well, this is the guy that fought Nicholas Mota. That ref stopped it early. Okay, cool. But I say I'm familiar, but I am kind of familiar with a lot of guys out of his team, or maybe his former team when Krause was, running things out there in Kansas City. Because back when I was fighting in Titan, my first Titan fight, I fought Eric Marriott, who was a guy out of that gym. And Marriott was a tough vet, and I feel like a lot of these guys got similar styles. Good jiu-jitsu, good wrestling, okay strikers on the feet. So I don't think it's anything different than what I've ever seen before. But I'm kind of familiar or comfortable with styles like Trey's.
You've had the 4 fights in the UFC before the last one, like, but do you kind of feel like this is like your first fight back, like, and not having to do with the top? Like, obviously your last fight was a UFC win and everything, but like do you kind of feel like this is legit your first fight back since getting cut a while back?
Not really, man. I felt like from the moment I stepped into the Apex for the Ultimate Fighter, it felt like okay. It felt like I never left, to be honest with you. Because man, I've been in and out of the UFC quite a few times since 2013, and that including fighting Strikeforce also. And then having some pretty big shows that I've been on through my time in and out. So man, it just like when I showed up to the fight in Boston, everything just felt normal. Like it felt like I never left. Weird, but no, it just feels like just another fight. Like I was there yesterday.
What have you kind of made of Trey's run in the UFC? Like a lot of mixed results. Like that last fight, I think he kind of got screwed out of that one. Like that should have been a win for him. Ended up being no contest. But like, what he kind of made of his 4 fights he has in the UFC?
So he can easily be 4-0 in the UFC. Even I think he lost his first fight by split decision to Jordan Lovett, which was close fight. I mean, sometimes when a fight like that is like, who do you really know who to give it to? And some may even think that he won that fight. He can easily start his UFC career off 1-0, and then he fought the undefeated kid, won that fight, and then lost his next fight. I can't really say his name, Basamundas or something like. Who was a good striker, but even that was still a fairly close decision. Some minor adjustments. He wins that fight, and then he beats Nicholas Mota. So easily could be 4-0. So I think he's a good fighter, man. He's a good, worthy opponent, and I like the matchup.
And I noticed you're the underdog again. Like, does that surprise you? Like, I feel like all your tough fight. Like, I know you're the underdog against Austin Hubbard. I know there are no lines for tough fights, but I feel like you would have been the underdog against Jason Knight and Lee Hammond with all the hype Connor had on him. Like, so it's kind of no stranger. Like, does it surprise you that you're still not getting the respect after winning tough?
Maybe a little bit. I did think, and I think I may have even opened as a favorite, but I did kind of come in here thinking that I would be the favorite, but in the back of my mind, it's like, damn, man, I don't want to be the favorite. Please make me the underdog again, because, I mean, reality is that I control the outcome. I control my destiny. Like these lines that they're putting out doesn't control that for me. So, but I always like being an underdog, man. I like making people money.
And with Trey, like, how do you kind of see this one playing out?
I think he's going to wrestle. He's going to shoot takedowns, which, I mean, that's fine. We're both jiu-jitsu guys. We're both comfortable wrestling and grappling. So, but you never know, man. You never know. A fight's a fight. You never know really how it's going to go. You can prepare for the best. You can prepare for the worst. But at the end of the day, when the cage door locks, you just never really know. So I'm just going to do everything I can to, bring out the best of my skills and get the win, however that may be.
Do you think you fought anyone like Trey? Like, do you think his style is similar to anyone you fought in the past?
Well, kind of like I brought up Eric Marriott years back, which was years ago, like 2014. But I would say, even him coming out of that same gym that they basically all came out of in Kansas City, and I would say their styles was very similar. But I mean, other than that, I don't think that Trey is going to be as strong as Austin Hubbard was. I don't think he has the wrestling that Austin Hubbard did. Now jiu-jitsu, yeah, he's going to be a better jiu-jitsu guy than Austin and probably some of the previous guys that I fought. But I like that, man. I like to grapple. I grapple every day. So it's going to be a fun one.
What do you think a win over Trey does for you here? Like, I know he isn't like he's just 1-2 in the UFC, but like that last fight should have been a win. So like, what do you think a win does for you?
I think it definitely rises my stock a little bit, because I've done nothing but fight some of the toughest guys in the UFC. Basically all the guys that I fought in the UFC ended up being ranked or top contenders or main eventing cards here and there. So I think that just keeps on moving me up the ladder. My overall goal now is not to be satisfied or not just to be happy fighting in the UFC. It's to climb the rankings. I want to get numbered by my name, and I want to ultimately one day fight for the world title.
Thiago Moises is the only guy still in the UFC that you fought on your first stints. Like, is that a fight you'd like to get back to kind of show everyone how much better you've gotten in those couple of years since that one?
Not really, but I mean, if somehow happened, I wouldn't turn it down.
Mm.
But even that, I mean, there's not an excuse for that fight. I mean, I think Thiago Moises beat me more soundly than anybody else did in the UFC, even though it was a decision. Because even the Steven Siler fight, I felt like it was 1-1 going to the third, and I was winning the third round until I made rookie move, which I was very young, very inexperienced back then. And then I come back against Barcelos, which that fight was just crazy fast paced, back and forth, and I felt like I got too comfortable and set up right in front of him and allowed him to capitalize. And, he got the TKO. And then Burgos, man, I was winning the fight, dropped him and was going for the kill and got reckless because, I've never been in like submission danger before, I think. And, that really opened my eyes and helped me out, as growing as a fighter. And then Moises, I fought him in his home state of Brazil, and I don't like to travel out of the States much. I feel like that definitely takes me out of my comfort zone, being in another country, being this was in Brazil and fighting in front of all of his fans and his people. I just didn't feel right in that fight, which is not an excuse. I mean, Thiago, Moises, the dude's good. That's why he's still in the UFC, and that's why he's been ranked and fought main events. But yeah, if that fight ever happened, man, I mean, I think it would be a different fight.
And just kind of going back, like, remember when we were talking in your XFC days with like that tournament and stuff when we were doing interviews? Like, is it kind of crazy how your kind of career played out? Because I remember for a while, like, you weren't really sure if you're going to fight again after the XFC stuff. And then, like, you get on top. Now you're back in the UFC. Like, is it pretty crazy to look back in the past, like, 3 years for you?
Oh, I mean, if you could have told me where I'd be sitting at right now 3 years ago, I'd have probably been like, I don't think that'll happen. Maybe I thought that I could be, in like a PFL $1 million tournament somewhere. That was probably one of my goals, but being that I was in the XFC and, I was running through those guys, I didn't know what that future really held. And, and the next thing you know it, on the shelf for almost 2 years, not fighting. And I'm kind of thinking, man, not a lot of guys want to sign me, and one of the reason why is because I got too many fights. So most of the promotions, all the regional promotions are trying to build guys up, and I'm just too tough of a fight for some of these younger guys. So a lot of them don't want to put you to fight. So it's like the only place you can really fight is maybe like bare knuckle or PFL or Bellator. And just, every time I would almost close a deal with one of them, it would fall through. So, and then my manager hits me one day and says, hey, I sent you an application to the next Ultimate Fighter. Go fill it out and send it back. And I'm like, should I do this or not? And then, everybody around me convinced me that, yeah, you need to take it, just see where it goes. And here we are, man. Won the Ultimate Fighter. So it's crazy.
Just final thing, like, what is the goal then for you this year?
Stay winning, man. Stay training hard, stay healthy, and stay winning. Right. If I keep winning, I can't be denied. I'm going to move up the ladder. I'm going to climb the rankings, and I'm going to earn the spot that I feel like I deserve in the UFC. So, and like I've been telling people for the last couple months, man, I just, I feel like none of this is new anymore. I feel like I'm not a newbie in the UFC or anything like that. I feel like I belong to be up there with some of the top guys that are still in the UFC since 2013. So, yeah, my overall goal is to keep winning, man, put some wins together and stay on this win streak that I'm on.
Well, Kurt, I appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, man, no problem. Thanks for having me on like always.